I'm Alan McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Alan McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. Today is Wednesday, October 26, 2022. And on Wednesdays, we talk about wealth creation. I'm pleased to have colleagues, friends, leaders in our community who are focused on how we build community, how we build family, how do we build sustainability, employment opportunity, and more. Let me bring everybody in. First of all, though, let me say hi to my writing colleague and friend, Brenda Lyle-Gray. Brenda, how are you, first of all?
Fine. How are you?
Good. I told our guest before we began that you and I go back to kindergarten, and it's a pleasure and a wonderful thing to be able to talk with you every day as you write stories about these conversations that we print in Inside News. And the beauty of it is that we both are bringing a lens of some 70 years of looking at the world from when we started as 5-year-olds in kindergarten in Kansas City, Missouri. Well, I have the same feeling of longevity with each of our guests today. Dave McGee runs Build Wealth Minnesota, a phenomenal program that we've been talking about, writing about, promoting for a good part of this year. My friend Alfred Babington-Johnson leads the Stairstep initiative. He is a master community builder. One of his famous sayings that I use all the time is that his mission is in part that we complicate our lives. We get close together and figure out how to live and navigate by being intentional in complicating our relationships. And Marcus Owens is here. Marcus Owens is in a new capacity in an initiative called 1 million careers for African Americans in the next 10 years. We'll talk about that. The project is called 110.org. Gentlemen, brothers, good to see you all. Welcome to the conversation.
Good to see you, Al.
David, start with you. Let's, first of all, let's do Build Wealth 101. You've got an event coming up you want to promote and get people connected to, but let's start at the beginning. Build Wealth 101.
Wow, Build Wealth 101. Well, we've been helping families build sustainable social and economic wealth here for, 18 years now. And it's been going very well. We put in thousands of families. I mean, the number one way to build wealth really is through home ownership. So we've put thousands of families in home ownership. But lately, as you've been airing for the last several months, we started an initiative in January of this year called 9,000 Equities. We've raised quite a bit of money to try to help address the Black disparity home ownership gap here in the state of Minnesota, which is one of the worst in the nation, as we're one of the richest states in the nation. However, the gaps in employment, gaps in housing, home ownership has been the worst. And we are taking a really aggressive stance on trying to close that gap by 15% through this 9,000 Equities initiative. And we've gotten a lot of support, a lot of traction, a lot of moving parts, and a number of folks have come together to partner in this initiative and effort. So we you were airing earlier this year in June, we did a Black Homebuyer Expo. We are being unapologetically Black with this particular effort. We're doing some lending and some other things that is specifically for Black families. We're opening up resources specifically for Black families. And as we were coming together, about 16 partners so far have been onboarded. And as we have been doing our work, about 80% of the people that we work with are females. Nothing's wrong with that. It's great to see our sisters get in and start building wealth and do well for their families. But 80% of the folks have been females. And so we got around the table and did a powwow around how do we get men involved in this process and getting men to start helping and getting in a position to build legacies for their family. And part of the 9,000 Equities initiative is to get 9,000 families into 9,000 homes to start building 9,000 legacies, because the equity and the leveraging of equity and the power of ownership of land and homes has the ability to build a legacy to create generational wealth. And so we got together and decided that with all the young men and all the violence that's going on, and we're losing young men to gun violence and a number of different things, it is time to take a stance and begin to bring our men together and get them in a position to start building equity and take their minds off some of this other stuff and really start thinking about one day they're going to be grandparents. And we need to get in a position to take back what has been stolen from us over time, where we've been stripped from our land, stripped from different places. Then we've been given back our land and 40 acres and a mule and some other things, and then got it stripped again. And over the last couple of decades, the gap is widening, and less and less of our owning.
Go ahead, keep going.
Owning land. And so we created an initiative about 3 months ago. We've been working on it, and the goal was to bring together a summit. And we were going to address and create a summit where we were going to take away every opportunity and every excuse from men from getting engaged in this process of owning land, owning homes, accessing higher wages, and all of the disparities that we have. How do we start taking a stance collectively as men? And so this summit that we're going to be having here on this Saturday, October 29th, starting at 9:30, we're going to serve a light breakfast, but from 10 o'clock till about 2:30, we've got a lineup of some community leaders with Mahmoud Al-Kati, several pastors. We're bringing a religious community, the banking community. We're going to be bringing wealth and health community, health and wellness. We're going to be bringing like I said, every resource and opportunity, and a lot of the major leaders in the community that have made it's their life work to help Black men and Black families are all going to be in attendance, speaking and empowering these men to move forward. You got Lewis King. I get to say he's the king of trying to get people credentialed and earning more income and getting, he said the best program is a job. And so he's been really working hard on that. Warren McLean over at Neon has spent most of his, decades helping people and entrepreneurs take their businesses to another level. So we've got Alfred Babington, Reverend Babington, and some others from the religious community are also going to be talking about Black men, their role in the family, the church's role, and trying to get men back in the proper place. And we've got a young man's perspective. So there's a panel with young men who are going to give us an insight on the disconnect between old and young, and how do we get young men thinking about building legacies at their young age now and getting involved in a number of these things. So it's going to be an awesome day. And I understand, Al, you're going to be, you've got a role in this as well. You're going to be doing a call to action. So we're not trying to just have an event to look good. We're trying to literally walk away with movement out of this event.
Well, it's an exciting opportunity. Babington, jump in if you would, brother. We have been at this a long time, and provide your sense of context, why this work is important, where we are in the arc of movement from when we both began this journey, together. But even before we met, we've been doing this work. Weigh in if you would.
Yes. So thanks, Al, and thanks, David, for the great work you have done and continue to do. I think what we really have at core, Al, all of us, Marcus, and Brenda, David, all of us, is a concern that we have a better community. It's one thing to focus on individual ascents to the peak. It's one thing to talk about saving one starfish at a time and that sort of thing, but that leaves us short. The messaging is too narrow in that individual approach to things. We've got to find ways to more broadly engage our entire community. And Al, you're so central to that in with one part of it, and that is the narrative. What do folks believe about the community? What do they believe about themselves? And if you accept a narrative that is narrow, that has a ceiling that barely clears the top of your head, you're living in a compressed, narrow space that will not serve you for long and won't serve your people. So we've got to get to a better narrative. And so one of the things that David has done so wonderfully well is to speak to this core issue of the development of wealth. Okay, and I think Al, it's important to understand that wealth has to be about more than money.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a way to connect resource with value. Mm-hmm. And so even in this 9,000 equities program, that's a sense of impacting the narrative. Can we, who have been historically, well, first of all, we weren't buyers or sellers, we were the bought and sold.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, we've come to a place where we get to be consumers in ways that are exploitive. Can we change the narrative to say, how do we start to build real wealth, that is to say value and resource, real health, which is to say a sense of well-being? How do we get to that? And so there are all these building blocks, but David is on a very important mission to provide that foundational piece, so that when our families go from generation to generation, there's been a clear advancement of some kind. There's a better toehold. There's a catapult, if you will, and it is home ownership, land ownership, as Marcus is involved, business development, but all of it related to values. If we divorce our activities from values, we are rudderless in a sea that we will surely drown in. So I thank God for the effort. And one additional thing, and that is David's focus here on Black men at this particular event. Normally, folks who want to focus on Black men want to talk about violence prevention, or how can we get people into drug treatment, or regrettably homelessness, or any number of things. But this is a positive take. This is an opportunity to talk about something that is moving forward, dream attainment. So anyway, this is a special time, a special guy, this David McGee. I call him a quiet storm because he is all of that in terms of the hard work he's done down through the years and continues to do. So I'm just delighted, Al, that we are continuing to move forward to change the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring the visual up. I'll put it up here, and David, you can talk about this a little bit. Pretty powerful. It's just as large as we can make it. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
So take a minute, David, and just reflect on what you've put together here, what the image, the concept, and the value of this gathering, this venture is.
Well, the image, as you can see, we're kings. I mean, this image really came to being by the time we were done. It's like, wow, the power of what this says. And I'm a man of God, so I see 7 powerful men. In this heading, you got Mahmoud, like the grandfather, the wisdom. You're seeing just a makeup of some really, and not that this is our whole community, but that's a powerful lineup of folks.
Wow.
And there's 12 men, which is foundational, discipleship, so to speak, is what it shows me. I'm just talking about the visual of what this says. Is there's power, there's pillars. it's time to move this to another level. And I just there's a really good lineup. The way it's structured, there will, as I said earlier, it's put in a place where this isn't just to have a sweet tooth or candy. There's substance to every one of the speakers and every one of the subjects that we're going to be covering. And there'll be a room, as we said, we're going to take away all the excuses. There'll be no excuse for any Black man, young or old, to attend this event and not leave there with instruction, direction, and resources to move uh, their lives and their family's life to the next level.
This is so cool. Before we started the show, I was working on editing a story that Brenda has written for the next edition of Insight. And the working title of it is Health plus Wealth equals Community. I just want to read the two paragraphs that the article opens with because it's germane to this conversation. It starts off saying that last Wednesday's edition of The Conversation with Al McFarlane reflected the power of sitting together in community, examining the sense of inevitability and imminence of exponential development of our community, fueled by excellence and experience in data-driven decision-making to create health and wealth. Big statement, big statement. It goes on to quote one of the principals in last week's program, our dear sister, Kenya McKnight. She said, open quote, "I think people interested in business need to explore and understand that there are no real boundaries or barriers in life. You must make up your mind on what you want to do and who you want to be and put yourself in a position to win," said Kenya McKnight, founder, president, CEO of the Black Women's Wealth Alliance. And it goes on from there. The interview includes notes from conversations with the other participants in that program. Dr. Cunningham, who's the Assistant Commissioner of Health, state of Minnesota, MDH, and also our friend Dorothy Bridges, a banker, and a neighbor of you guys there at the Regional Acceleration Center. She's going to be running META. So talk about that, Babington, about our community making up our mind. It's number one. But also talk about what I project here is a sense of both inevitability and a sense of imminence. I think the change we're talking about is imminent. It's near. This is not far away. It doesn't mean the work that we have to do doesn't last a long, long time, but the unfolding of this is at hand right now. And I think sensibility and balance tell us that we're in for a work plan that might last, 10, 12 lifetimes? Generations and generations. But we start right now with what we're doing now and with the discovery of the capacity to create and act out new narratives that support our vision, our version, and our capacity to win. Babington, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think you nailed it, Al, with when you said vision. If you don't have a sense of aspiration, if you don't have a sense of a place you want to go, you're standing still or falling backwards, And regrettably, I think too many of our community have been delivered a vision that says, I'm going to die shortly, or or I can't do anything. My mama didn't, my daddy didn't. I mean, we're inundated with these negative messages, and so the vision becomes constricted if it exists at all. So, but there are these bright shining lights that are occurring increasingly in our community. They don't. Thank God for Insight News and for the spokesman and for those. Thanks for the coverage. I think back to when Marcus has not yet found his way onto the planet. but David McGee was probably a middle-aged man at the time.
I'm sorry. Marcus, that puts you in a bad place. Was there a date on your landing? Reverend Babington, I'm shamed.
But the point is, you remember Ebony magazine. You remember Jet magazine and Sepia. Anybody remember Sepia?
Mm-hmm.
You know, David, you don't act like you didn't remember Sepia. Stop it. Okay. Marcus is the only one that has an opportunity to beg out. Did you, Marcus?
I was around for all of those.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Don't let the smooth face fool you.
But the point is, they were lifting up these positive stories and lifestyles and impacts and whatnot, you know, and somehow or another, you know, it's almost in a way like the Civil War and Reconstruction, and then the aftermath, all this, you know, or even Obama being elected president, and then the aftermath. You know, it seems like you get these surges, and then there's these pieces in between that threaten everything that's been achieved. But I see, as you have said, Al, that there's progress being made right now. You know, in various places. You know, we can look. Oh, that's a nice achievement, Kenya. Oh, wow, Marcus, good job. You know, David, you're moving. Whatever. We're seeing these breakthrough that we have to connect. That we have to connect, so we get a wave and a surge. You know. So I think you're right, Al. There's a huge challenge an extraordinary opportunity in this season.
Let's bring Marcus in. Marcus, brother, good to see you. And I'll say that in many respects, you and your generation represent the dream that people like Babington and David and I have worked for and continue to work for. We stand on shoulders of people that were committed and capable and that delivered. They delivered the opportunity that we are building out and expanding. And I see our role, Marcus, is creating space for the Marcus Owens of the world. Extremely gifted, talented, confident, committed, aware to undertake this work of change in our community and change in humanity. It's a big job, but I think it's a job that you and your colleagues and our people are equal to. Welcome to the program. Just jump in wherever you want to, and in the process, talk about your vision, your mission with your new project, 110.org.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show with you, Al. Good to see you, David, and Reverend, and Brenda. Good to meet you as well. I mean, you know, all the conversation that's going on is right on time for this. So over the last few months, I've just had an opportunity to kind of sit back after I've had a good run with the African American Leadership Forum and with Neon over the last 8 to 10 years here, and just wanted to figure out how do I give back and continue to give back. You know, my mission in life is to add value to my community. You know, growing up here in Minneapolis on the north side, community gave to me, whether we were up at North Commons Park or the YMCA. It's just like everybody at different intervals and generations were always giving into the community and thinking about it as a collective, right? And I've had the privilege and opportunity to be connected to all these wonderful leaders for some time now. And really my mission now is just to keep adding value and keep finding ways to bring light in what Reverend Babington was talking about earlier around the narrative that we want, that vision that we want in the community. How do we gather that and then put a light on that, right? And so one of the big efforts that I'm bringing into the community right now is an effort called 110. 110 has a mission to lead a coalition of employers, workforce developers, community partners, and Black talent to ultimately hire, promote, and advance 1 million Black talent without four-year degrees into family-sustaining jobs in the next 10 years, right? And this is a nationwide effort. Minneapolis, St. Paul gets to be one of the markets, 13 markets that have kicked this off over the last 2 years. And, through this mission, we know that hiring based on skills is 5 times more predictive of future performance than hiring for education, right? and 2.5 times more predictive of success than hiring for work experience alone. So ultimately, that's smart business, plain and simple. So this effort really isn't about just simply matching people without 4-year degrees to jobs they're skilled for. It's really about focusing on great jobs that pay a living wage that can support the entire family. Jobs at these sought after companies that enable people to pay not just their bills, but also save money to buy a home and work with Mr. McGee, and then also invest in their children's education, right? And so, I came on the last 5 months and I get to act as the community development lead. So I get to work in this kind of position where I'm connecting the employers that we have locally here that have signed up to be the lead target Cargill Medtronic. And then I get to work with organizations such as PPL and Hired and Avivo, St. Paul College and others that are workforce developers. And I'm looking to add more to that portfolio of talent developers that 110's calling it, and then community partners that can really connect our talent to these opportunities and help usher them through the process of exploration and development. But then once they get into those organizations, ensuring that they're successful there and not left alone, right? And so this is over 10 years and we're really just hitting the ground running right now. As of today, 110 has enlisted more than 70 companies, 100 talent developers that have hired and promoted more than 44,000 Black talent without a 4-year degree into these family sustaining wages. Are you guys seeing that? I'm getting a little flash of it's like Halloween coming on the screen here with me. But ultimately, this is not about philanthropy. This is not about charity. This is about the private sector finally stepping up and leading in a way that gives us the opportunity, access to those opportunities that we've been denied for so long, right? And so we want measurable outcomes with immeasurable possibilities for generations to come, right? And so that's one of the many things I get to work on right now, but it is connecting those opportunities and figuring out how to change the system for us to get our people into these opportunities.
How do we accelerate that? How do we support that in community? How do we take advantage of the opportunities that you're working to develop and deliver to the community, Marcus?
Yeah, so there's 4 real, important key ways to do this. Black talent. We need Black talent that do not have the 4-year degree to come onto the platform today, develop a profile, and start to explore these opportunities. We need community partners, those that are connected to the Black talent that are helping them navigate this world around their career and developing themselves. We need those talent developers that are providing training, certifications, and other things that develop the skills of that talent. And ultimately, we need employers. We need more employers to come on and think about and rethinking the way that they hire. For too long, we've used this filter of the 4-year degree to create real meaningful opportunities. And ultimately, as employers start to look at these their opportunities within their organization, what they're learning is that 4-year degree isn't, about success. It's really about thinking about that person with skills and taking a skills first approach to hiring the talent. So we need more employers to step up. Today, we have 150 jobs right here in the market with employers such as Delta and Cargill, Medtronic, Farmers, as well as Chase and a few other employers. So coming onto the platform, you get to see these opportunities, you get to develop a profile, but then you start to get connected in. And we develop other opportunities throughout the year where you can actually plug in with these employers. We did a showcase back in September with Cargill, and it was really an opportunity for Cargill to present themselves to our community. Oftentimes you go to a job fair and you got to have your resume. Well, when's the opportunity for these companies to come with their resume and share with our community about who they are and how they're actually doing the work internally to ensure there's an inclusive place for Black talent to come in and be successful?
Awesome. That's wonderful. Babington and David, jump in if you would. I'm interested in how we work together to encourage movement in our community and for our community, and also promote the idea, the awareness, the understanding that the core value that we're bringing to market is our own work, our own capability, our own, as I said, vision and version, and that we bring and are and represent tremendous value. But we need to see ourselves as that value and see our role as creating and expanding value for ourselves and for the marketplace. David, what do you think?
Yeah, right now I'm just I was speaking to one of the leaders that is going to be speaking at this event, and one of the unfortunate things is that we don't collaborate when we have great ideas. A lot of times we're in silo. I'm listening to this 110. That's all we do is work with families in a real comprehensive way. And wow, 110 should be on the menu come Saturday. I hope you find a way to get there or get us information there. You're literally, Marcus, you're finding a way to completely take away the excuse of not having, viable employment to start building a legacy for families. I really believe that a lot of us have gifts. I know all of us have gifts and talents that need to make room for us. But as Babington was mentioning earlier, we've been conditioned to not have hope and to even go after anything like this. There's folks that would love to work for a lot of the corporations you're speaking of, and not having the credentials, but having the skill sets. I've got men that I'm working with and been working 17 years in the same job, still making $17, $18 an hour. There's something wrong with that, that formula to work, nearly 20 years or 2 decades of my life and don't even have $1 per decade. And that's not livable. That's extreme poverty for a family of 3 or 4. And we have so many folks that are, we've been conditioned to feel that that's okay because they got a job. I'm bringing home food, the lights are on, and we have shelter. But we're operating in poverty. And we've been conditioned to stay in poverty. We're talking about building wealth, and that's a difficult starting point when we've got folks that are conditioned to live in poverty, and we're talking about generational wealth. So there's a huge disconnect, and there's a lot of unlearning that goes on, and a lot of conditioning. And it's going to take all of us working together. I think this summit is a really good starting point, but we need to really make some links. I didn't. You just told me about this the other day, Marcus. It's like, wow, this is something that's so valuable to our community. It just seems like everybody should be knocking down your door at this point. I don't even know how you even have capacity to talk about it because you're so busy with people that are in line needing this information. That's a game changer. These are game changers that we're doing, as Babington spoke a little earlier, but they're in silo. What we're doing is a game changer. What Lewis King does from time to time is a game changer. Here's a whole list on what Warren McLean is doing is a game changer. But how do we link all these things together to bring power in this season to really, as we've been doing, just being unapologetic about how we're doing it, who we're doing it for, and trying to make when we look back 10 years from now, we can see the change. We can see the change.
Definitely, go ahead.
Yes. So, David, you're messing with me. I've got a question or two, but then something I want to offer. So Marcus, the issue of the threshold, heretofore, the whole idea you need a 4-year degree, whatever. What is the threshold that people need to realistically be thinking about to be able to engage as a candidate in your enterprise?
I think really what it comes down to is how you tell your skill story. Like all of us have developed skills, as young people, whether it was in high school or, we were taking care of family, we're taking care of, ourselves, we're working, we're getting these experiences. But what is the skill story that actually comes and it pairs up with that experience that you had? It isn't that, oh yeah, I worked as a customer service rep, before, or I worked at, Chipotle or something like that. It's like, you have a skill. You can organize. You can talk to people. You can lead others. Like these are all skills that are necessary to actually function in these jobs, right?
So does the organization kind of like the people who help you build a resume, do you actually engage folk and help them create that story?
Yeah, so with the partners that the coalition, so 110 is a coalition-based organization, right? And so they're looking for those that do the talent development. So Summit, PPL, all these folks that are doing workforce development, they're helping folks with interview prepping, with resumes, with all the things that you need to like get yourself prepared for that application and interview, right? It's like, okay, how do we get them to talk with the employers so that the employers can say, well, this is the skills that we're actually needing for this role. So as you're talking with your people, how do we make better matches versus this, very abstract, like, well, I think you should have these things on your resume. Go ahead and apply. Good luck, right? But when we start to forge these relationships and these connections, and you actually have someone in the talent acquisition department at Cargill, and you can say, what are you looking for in this job? And then you can go and work with that talented individual and say, okay, let's talk about your skills in organizing. Let's talk about your skills in communication. Let's talk about your skills in leading people, because that's going to translate to that opportunity, right? But what we're learning, though, is that employers for the long time have put these unrealistic requirements and also weren't actually aligned to the job itself. And so you would actually think, oh, if I'm going for a customer service job, I know how to talk to people. I know how to organize my time. I should be perfect for that role. And all along, they've been saying, well, no, you need a 4-year degree in mass communications and all these other things, right? So it's like, get the employers to talk and think differently, but then also then give that information to those that are developing the talent so that they can work with talent. So really the threshold, to your point, an adult, 18 years old, do you have to have any college experience? Absolutely not. Do you need to start to think about your skill story because you have something that you have to offer? Yes. And like, how do you work with those workforce developers to start to tell that story in a real way?
Al?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So, David mentioned this cancer that it continues to bleed us as a people and the society as a whole. And it's that whole individualism thing, And so in terms of different kinds of social adventures, it ends up being silos. I mean, it's a cancer. And somehow we've got to break into some intentional activity of connectivity. And so even as Marcus is and 110, wherever it began or whatever, is calling together corporations, I think we need to start thinking about double bottom lines on all the things that we do as a community. Okay, so how do we create social infrastructure in our community? How do we create musculature beyond the transaction, capacity beyond that? Okay, so let me suggest to you one thing, and that is we have this one resource that we've always had as a people, the only real resource we had as a people, but it's become neglected, marginalized, in disrepair in many situations. And let me suggest it's the African American church. Historically, it's got the credibility of having been there for us. Obviously, since the civil rights movement, it's fallen on hard times in various kinds of ways, and there are all kinds of new voices. And regrettably, many of the new voices sort of disdain the history and the rich opportunity that the churches provide. So what if, as we're developing different kinds of things, just as Marcus, you develop or are developing this networking of corporations, good news. In terms of our community, how do we recognize the value internal to the community, the institutions, the Black press? I mean, we've got institutions in the community. Why aren't we more intentional in terms of pulling them together and activating them, empowering them, building musculature there that can sustain beyond the transaction? I think that's
You're hitting it on the head. Let me tell you what you motivated in me, Brother Babington. I've told this story a few times. I'll tell it again. I started my career in journalism at Worthington, Minnesota. Worthington's a small town. My dad and mom moved there from Kansas City, where Brenda and I lived, when I was maybe in maybe 65. But I came back there after my military service to go to a community college, and from there to the University of Minnesota Journalism School. But while I was there, I worked for this daily community newspaper, the Worthington Daily Globe. The Globe served a community of 10,000 people in Worthington and Nobles County. And the main point is a daily newspaper, 15,000 people, a daily enterprise. And it was extremely successful, extremely profitable. So I come to Minneapolis and St. Paul. I work for the Pioneer Press. And I look at our community, Marcus, and I say, how is it that Worthington can generate a daily revenue enterprise that serves all the residents of Nobles County, Minnesota on a daily basis with a high degree of profitability? And we don't have a daily expression among the, at that time, 40,000 Black people here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Now we have almost 300,000 Black people in the Twin Cities. And it's a question of our imagination, of us thinking big enough. And you're thinking big, Marcus, by being part of an initiative that talks about 1 million jobs. David, you're thinking big when you talk about 9,000 equities. The work you're talking about, Babington, and activating, mobilizing, growing, nurturing the existing capacity that we have in the Black church, the foundational wealth that exists there, and the systems that exist there. So my point is, this conversation is important and rich because we should be making ourselves think about innovation and doing things that can be done and should be done. We simply have to say it and do it, recognizing that there are no barriers, as Kenya McKnight said. And I brought up, as I heard us speak, another part of that interview. Kenya said, I'm quoting, "It's a responsibility we have to do in the memory of those who laid down their lives." They taught us that none of us can do everything, but all of us can
do anything. How about anything?
Or anything, that's right. And she says one of those some things is keeping our work alive without undermining each other. David, that's what you said. Yeah. That was it. How do we focus on the process, the protocol of coming out of the silos, keeping our work, our vision alive in a way that does not require us to sabotage or undermine our neighbor, our friend, our brother, our sister, our community? What do you think, David?
Yeah, wow, you're right in hitting the nail on the head. And we not only us being conditioned against each other like that, there are systemic things in place to create competition amongst us, where I call it the little nickel, and we dangle the little nickel, and then you have all of us fighting like, rugrats, chasing $100,000, and there's only enough for really 5 of us, but there's 15 of us that needs it, and then we're constantly, there's always systems that are in place to keep us at odds with one another. And that's historic. We can take that all the way back to slavery.
Is that the story in Native Son, I think it is, where they put the Black boys in a boxing ring for white people's entertainment, and throw some coins in, and they make them fight, and there's no way anybody in that ring is going to win, but they all entertain other people, right? But that's kind of the principle. Marcus, you're shaking your head. You jump in here. What are you thinking?
I know David's right on. I mean, there's always been this this sense of urgency, but anxiety of I have to go after what's available, and so the conditioning of us to particularly in the community development space, we have to think get scrappy and think about things in what can I do today? What can I do maybe tomorrow? And it leaves us, without the opportunity to think big, think what's the possibilities, what's the vision that we have for community, right? And so it's just this perpetual cycle that leaves us in these silos, right? And sometimes when we do get a vision, we're afraid to share that vision for the fear that maybe somebody that isn't competing with us will take it and lead with it, right? But what's been, I think, powerful the last 2 years is that I think a lot of that's going away. And the folks that have been down on the ground doing the work for such a long time are realizing both, it was a long realization and it's a current realization that there is some real possibility right now. We have to level up. I think, Babington, you were talking about it earlier. Like there's some real, wind that we can start to put ourselves under, knowing that the time does shrink in terms of us being able to level up, right? I think with all of that, though, have the vision, have the narrative, match that vision. And then we need to then start to focus on what is the process that we work together on, right? And so it isn't just the ideas that come to light, but it's the how do we do it together that comes to light. What's the infrastructure look like to connect 9,000 equities in 110? What's the infrastructure to look like to put the Black churches together with Black-led organizations? What's the infrastructure and the connections that need to be formed and made? And then start to make those things so that those visions that we all have in the work that we're doing actually gets elevated up because it comes with the power of us all.
That's good.
And the key word in all of this is intentionality.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to decide this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And whether you call it vision, intention, whatever, we need to do this. We need to work together. We need to have a better narrative. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's that Nike slogan. We just need to do it. I mean, we went through a cohort, a leadership training cohort with Prosperity Now about building high impact nonprofits of color. And I'm a banker 40 years as of September, and made a lot of banks billions of dollars over the years. But there still was this Black conditioning that I had that I couldn't break out of this funk of going through the process of, I can get a nickel, maybe they'll give me a quarter, then I can get me $1, as opposed to looking at some of our counterparts. They helped me look at a national mindset of my outcomes. My outcomes here at Bill Wealth, Minnesota dwarfed peers of mine that were $100 million nonprofits. And our outcomes dwarfed theirs by far. But yet and still, we were getting a little nickel. Mm-hmm. And they helped us reframe our thought and help, just as you were talking about, Marcus, re-articulating our skill sets, as you were talking about earlier about whether I have a degree or not, or, MAs and BSs and all kinds of things behind my name. I've got enough outcomes that show that the work that we do here surpasses state government in a sense. So, but how do we articulate it in a way and not get caught in this systemic thing of come against each other, but being able to articulate it, present it, and do it? As you were just saying, Babington, we decided we're going to do it. We're going to do 9,000.
Brenda, go ahead. You're going to
partners. We're going to do it. I just wanted to mention before we run out of time that we cannot forget November 8th coming up. It is too important. And I just wrote an article for Al called What is at Stake? And I didn't realize all that is at stake. And we're all talking about all of these wonderful things. And Mr. McGee, I have heard so much about Equity 9,000. I don't live in Minneapolis. I live in the mountains of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Wow. So, but the reason I bring it up is that we have a weatherman down here who is running for governor against Michelle Lujan. The reason it's 49 or whatever is that the Republicans are dumping tons of money in these elections. And we know that one of the persons we admire the most is your Attorney General, Keith Ellison. And he's running against someone who has no experience in politics, but they have an agenda. So all of you put together should have that same type of Reverend Babington's intentionality of saying, no, they will not win. We're going to get to the polls and we're going to vote and we're going to make for sure that all of this happens because they're serious. Mm-hmm. They've got trucks now with people with guns going to the polls and parading and intimidation or whatever. None of it is going to matter if they take over both of those chambers. Mm-hmm. Because they have a plan.
And the thing that's so insidious, and it's something we have to understand, is if somebody just keeps telling a lie, folks are going to start believing it.
Yeah, they are.
Keep telling the lie. And these babies are past masters at continuing to tell a lie in concert with one another. You know, so you're right, Brenda. We've got to be as insistent and persistent and reach out. You know, I don't care if your relatives live in Arkansas or whatever. We need to be turning out the vote here, but we need to be calling our cousins. Hey, get out to vote.
And we've done it. Stacey Abrams did it. We did it with Obama. We did it with Biden. We stepped out. But this is more consequential than any midterm that we've ever had because we'll all go back 10 or 15 steps if they get done what they want to get done. And it's so sad for our children because what happens to the generations that follow? So we want to be part of building wealth. And that has to be the mindset. So
great comments, Brenda. Excellent, wonderful. David, Marcus.
Yeah, what I would just add is like, you know, Brenda, you said it best. This is one of the biggest midterms, you know, in election history, right? And everything feels like it's always big, but we can't sit at home and just think that someone else is going to take care of it for us. We have to show up to the polls. We have to vote for our beliefs and the things that need to happen in our community. And those that are disenchanted that say, oh, well, politicians aren't doing anything for us. Well, there's a lot more that they can do. We know this. However, the alternative is putting people in power that are going to take away the things you do have today. And
very well put.
Right? Yeah. So put people in office that you believe in, put people in office that share your values, but at the same time, then hold them accountable because we have people in office today that have been listening to our community. They come to our aid, they come to with their ears, and then they're also trying to find new ways to support what we do in the community. And I've been in the fortunate position to be civically engaged and be connected to the administrations at all different levels. And I much rather work with these folks than the folks that are running against them because they won't listen to our community. They're not thinking about our community. They're not thinking about what we need. All the things that David and Babington have brought up around building wealth, whether it's, you know, family sustaining wages or homes or, you know, being able to just take care of their kids, like none of that matters to them for our community, right? So put yourselves out there and get your parents, your grandparents, get your kids. My daughter's 23. She needs to be at the polls. So whatever we have to do, we have to show up and show out.
And voting early is not a bad move because you don't know what might happen tomorrow.
That's true.
Yeah. Critical. It's critical we do vote. We've got to get to a place, and in addition to, we've got to get ourselves to start changing our conditioning as well. So we're Biden proof, Trump proof. You know, no matter who's in office, we need to vote and get some folks in office. But we've got to get ourselves ahead of the game somehow.
I want to thank all of you, David and Babington and Marcus, because each in your leadership capacity have engaged my business, Insight News, to generate the story, the message, narratives that free our people. And I think that what you've done demonstrates what we can do and should be doing. We simply need to, in this area as well, ramp it up, take it in an exponential fashion so that the narrative we're talking about is a narrative that is massive and expansive. We're competing against an ideation system, and the competition is a certain ignorance that that disserves all humanity, but at our particular expense, because it pushes us and assigns us and reinforces our being at the margin and our being inconsequential. And if we depend on, rely on decisions from that quarter to guide and direct our life, shame on us.
Shame on us.
Shame on us. So we have to decide that we are the authors of a future, and that future includes everybody on the planet. But we have that responsibility, that calling, that work is at our doorstep right now. And we have to decide that we are capable, worthy, and willing to do the work. And it's work that lasts, as I said, generations. It's not just this week and next week or the next 5 years. It's my children and their children and their children. It's change that is systemic, that allows to reemerge the best traits we can develop as human beings. So that's what I have to say. I wanted to take the last minute, David McGee, to ask you again to invite people to this Saturday's event. And then Babington, you and I are working on some marvelous work as well around the Highway 252 I-94 project. Take a minute, if you would, just sharing an important town hall that we're doing in the next few days, and a couple of them, as a matter of fact. So short time, but let's put it out there because that's what's important right now. First of all, Brother David, did we lose David?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just reminding us, and I hope you can pull up. Yeah, there we go. We want to invite everyone, every man, every Black man in the state of Minnesota and beyond to attend this Saturday Black Men's Legacy Summit. We're bringing up a lineup of a number of people to really talk about a lot of the discussion we had here today. We want to take away every excuse. The time is now to set the stage for us to begin to move move the mark and move the dial of building legacies and generational wealth for our families. Men leading the charge. This Saturday, October 29th, 9:30. It starts with breakfast. We'll be going till about 2:30, and we're looking for an awesome turnout. Hope to see you there.
Great. Babington?
I perhaps should have asked David this offline, but I sure hope there's some grits. Okay, so let me say this.
Leave it up to Reverend Babington.
So, as Al mentioned, it's important that we as a community start to become more strategic about issues that concern us. And so we have, for about a year and a half, been working together, McFarlane Media and Stairstep and the church community, to bring African and African-American voices to the planning and the development of the 252 I-94 project. That corridor runs through the largest number of African and African-American people in the state of Minnesota. And so we are actively engaged in trying to explain the process and trying to then raise the voices and the capacity to engage around this. And we're intending on the 8th of November to have a town hall, this same Conversations with Al McFarlane, around those issues.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to close with an invitation for people to watch on Netflix a show produced by the company owned by Michelle and Barack Obama. The show is called Descendants. Is anybody familiar with that? Anybody watch that yet? If you haven't watched it, you got to check it out. Babington, you need to watch it because, among other things, it talks about that process of urban removal, the crises you and we are addressing with displacement of our community through highway constructions that happened in '94 in St. Paul, Brownsville, and North Minneapolis with the I-94 project. But this film is about the last slave ship, the Clotilda, that was brought into Mobile, Alabama in about 1864 and brought in on a bet, an Irish slave trader bet that he could still bring in a cargo of human beings from Africa, despite the fact that in 1808, trafficking on the high seas was made illegal, and in this country, even punishable by imprisonment and death. And he snubbed his nose at it and bet somebody $1,000 that he could build a ship, go to Africa, buy, and he did this, brought a cargo of 100 human beings from Ghana to Alabama. You all heard of this place called Africa Town. And so this is a story about that and the descendants of it. And it's about the actual discovery of the ship that they sank in the river with the intent of hiding the evidence of this inhumane activity and illegal activity. So
what channel or what network? What channel or what?
It's on Netflix. So go to Netflix and look up Descendant. It's a powerful and wonderful movie. And the last thing I'll encourage people to do is to go online and check this resource out called Narrative. And Narrative is spelled with a K, just like knowledge is spelled with a K. It's a place where Black people are assembling to discuss and create futures in which we change ourselves and change the world. That's it for now. Listen, thank you, David McGee. Thank you, Marcus Owens. Thank you, Brother Reverend Babington-Johnson. Thank you, Brenda. And thank you who are listening and viewing. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.